IUPR Bible Radio is a teaching platform. Our teachings are for educational purposes only. We teach from both testaments in belief that God never changed his nature. That's based off Malachi 3 and 6, Hebrews 13, 8 and 9, and James 1:17. God never changed his nature. He was still the same in both testaments. And still is the God of judgment. He's going to judge people. But the Christians, they don't want to teach the judgment. Sunday so-called Christians teach a changing God. Like God giving grace to the righteous in the Old Testament, and now he's going to give grace to continual sinners in the New. That's a changing God. But Scripture and New Testament verses disagree with their theory. We here in our podcast intend to prove that the error, which is sin, of the Christians is intentional. It is. Whether it be doctrine, false feasts that cannot be proven in the Bible as being kept, like Easter and Christmas and birthday and dog day and cat day and bird day, or any other action that is intended to deceive the true children of Israel. We are not about senseless debates, which will not change minds, but cause more confusion. That's all it's about. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 is our motto. Prove all things, hold fast to that which is good, and that which is good is that law. Deuteronomy 6, verse 17, 18, Romans 7 and 12 confirms that the law is good. All praises to the Most High, brothers and sisters. I'm your host, the Apostle Reuben of IUPR Bible Radio, podcasting out of Little Rock, Arkansas, to the true saints of the Most High God. Happy Sabbath to you. Getting a late start today, but we got to start. Thank God for that. Doing a lot of 10-minute podcast episodes, I thought I was going to go through the day and do about 10 of them on different various subjects, but I decided I was going to do a longer podcast episode for the Sabbath day, as I always do. Not going to have you long. Just want to go back over in detail one of the 10-minute podcast episodes I went over earlier on today. So I want you to notice we're in John 7:35. I started here for a reason. And believe me, brothers and sisters, the hardest of proofs is how you make a believer. Now, if you're looking at John 7:35, it just states, "Then said the Jews among themselves, whether will he, that he is Christ, go, that we shall not find him?" Question mark. Will he go unto the dispersed? Now, I'm going to stop there because the Christians avoid the word dispersed. If you understand who the dispersed among the Gentiles are, you will see that these Jews were calling that same dispersed Gentiles. So there's a history behind this verse. You have to look at the history. You just can't read this verse and decide what the heck you want this verse to mean. Who are the dispersed among the Gentiles? Let's take a look at a few verses. I'm doing this again. Ezekiel. And brothers and sisters, we encourage you to download these videos, all of them. Because one day, brothers and sisters, when they're not available, you're going to be teaching from the platform because all we're doing is giving you the verses. We don't want you to sit on your hands. It's important that you have these verses to confront the Christians, because one or two verses maybe to precept with one, but that's all. Ezekiel 12:10. Say thou unto them, thus saith the Lord God, this burden concerneth the prince in Jerusalem and all the house of Israel that are among them. So there were northern kingdom with southern kingdom in the time of the Babylonian takeover. We're just letting you know that northern kingdom, remnants of the northern kingdom was with the southern. But I want to go on down. So when we go on down, because we understand that the burden is on Judah and northern kingdom, both. Let's drop down to verse 15. And they shall know that I am the Lord, when I shall scatter them among the Gentiles and disperse them in the countries. So who would be dispersed among the nations? Israelites. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Show you again. Ezekiel 20:21. Notwithstanding the children rebelled against me. They walked not in my statutes, which is my laws. They walked not in my laws, neither kept my judgments to do them. Which if a man do, he shall even live in them. They polluted my Sabbaths. Then I said, I will pour out my fury upon them. See, God poured out the fury upon Israel for Sabbath breaking. We're coming up with that podcast episode. Why was Jerusalem destroyed? It was a reason. Hidden reason. We're talking about AD 70. I will pour out my fury upon them to accomplish mine anger against them in the wilderness. Look at this. Nevertheless, I withdrew mine hand and wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted in the sight of the Gentiles, in whose sight I brought them forth. Watch this. I lifted up mine hands unto them also in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the Gentiles and disperse them through the countries. So you're seeing biblical proof who is dispersed among the Gentiles. You can see this. No getting around it. No getting around it. Operative word, dispersed. Operative word. Ezekiel 36:17, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their own way and by their doings. Their way was before me as an uncleanness of a removed woman. Wherefore I poured out my fury. He keeps saying, because they broke my laws, I turned against them by pouring out his fury. Wherefore I poured out my fury upon them, for the blood that they have shed upon the land, and for their idols, their sins, wherewith they have polluted it. The idols is the sins. You got to understand, the idols is the sins. That's why when we go back, let's go back here real quick. Let me show you this by proof. Ezekiel 23:49. And they shall recompense your lewdness upon you, and ye shall bear the sins of your idols. See? Sins of your idols. See, idols brought sins. Idolatry brought certain sins. So you see the sins of your idols. So idols are sins. And you shall know that I am the Lord God. So when we going back to understand idols now. Ezekiel 36:18. Wherefore I poured my fury upon them for the blood that they have shed upon the land, and for their sins wherewith they had polluted it. Now I want you to pay attention. And I scattered them among the Gentiles. Look. And they were dispersed through the countries. See who was dispersed? You continue to read over and over and over again that the dispersed through the countries among the Gentiles were Israelites. According to their way and according to their doings, I judged them. This is the dispersed mentioned in John 7:35. Isaiah 11, future prophecy, Isaiah 11. Isaiah 11 verse 10. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign to the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek. Now, an ensign to the people. Now we're going to show you this. Ensign to the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek. The people are the Gentiles later on in the verse. But he says he shall stand for an ensign. Now let's go back. I want to go back to the book. Who's going to receive this ensign? Isaiah 5. Pay close attention. Isaiah chapter 5. In verse 26. Because it was written before. And he shall lift up an ensign to the nations from far. The nations. An ensign to the nations from far. And will hiss unto them from the ends of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. Notice it says, he shall set up an ensign to the nations from far. From far. And will hiss unto them from the ends of the earth. Ensign to which nations from far? Who is he going to hiss for from the ends of the earth? And who's going to come to him with speed and swiftness? It has to be proven. Let's see with another biblical verse or Bible verse what this verse is talking about. Because remember, and he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far and will hiss unto them from the ends of the earth. Hiss. The book of Zechariah. Let me show you these nations he's going to hiss for. Watch this. Zechariah 10 and 6. And I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph. Joseph is northern kingdom. The house of Joseph is northern kingdom. And will bring them again to place them. For I will have mercy upon them. He's going to have mercy upon Joseph. And they shall be as though I had not cast them off. For I am the Lord their God, and I will hear them. And they of Ephraim, because it says Joseph in the previous verse, we were telling you Joseph was Ephraim, and they of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, and their heart shall rejoice as through wine. Yea, the children shall see it and be glad. Their heart shall rejoice in the Lord. Here we go. I will hiss for them and gather them, for I have redeemed them, and they shall increase as they have increased. So who is he going to hiss for? Ephraim. Those are the nations he's going to hiss for, and they're going to come from far. Those are the nations that he's going to hiss for. So when we go back, I want to go back to Isaiah 5. I want to go back to Isaiah 5. Isaiah 5. Verse 26 to read it again, then go back to Isaiah 5. No, go back to Isaiah 11, I'm sorry. Isaiah 5:26, and he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far. Nations. 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 Sorry about that, brothers and sisters. That's not the one I wanted. I was trying to find another. Was wondering what happened to my. I'm not going to worry about it right now because I didn't plan on really going to that screenshot. But the nations he's going to lift up an ensign for from far was Northern Kingdom. And he was going to hiss for them, those nations, from the end of the earth. Those nations were northern kingdom. You saw it. That was Ephraim. But see, when we go back to Isaiah chapter 11, back to Isaiah 11, verse 10. In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign to the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek. Which Gentiles will receive the ensign? Oh, we just read it in Isaiah 5:26, northern kingdom. That's why it says, to it shall the Gentiles seek. The Gentiles that were going to receive the ensign was northern kingdom, who he's going to hiss for. And his rest shall be glorious. Watch this. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people. There it is. Which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the isles of the sea. Look at this. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations. Same thing it says. Same thing it says in Isaiah 5:26, an ensign for the nations. You're going to see it again. Now we proved that the nations in Isaiah 5:26 he was going to hiss for was northern kingdom, based off Zechariah 10:7. Now look at this verse. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations. Which nations? And shall assemble the outcasts of Israel. Because that is what it said before in Isaiah 5:26 and Zechariah 10:7. The outcasts of Israel is northern kingdom. That's who the ensign is going to be set up for. And gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. You continue to see who was dispersed throughout the four corners. You're reading about who. Let's go back to John 7:35. I don't want to even go there. John 7. Verse 35. Then said the Jews among themselves, whither will he go that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? So the dispersed, which were Israelites, were Gentiles. And there was a reason why. Again, the dispersed among the Gentiles were also Gentiles themselves for a reason. Now again, I want to go back to this screen here. Now, again, I typed in, does the word non-Israelite or non-Jew appear in the Bible? What I mean, brothers and sisters, is there a verse? Do we have one Bible verse? One Bible verse. Just one. Just one. That will say that a Gentile is a non-Jew, non-Israelite. One verse. I typed this in a Google search and look at what it says now. Does the word, you can see it at the top. If you look at the top with the magnifying glass up at the top with the mic, does the word non-Israelite or non-Jew appear in the Bible? Look what they said. No. The exact terms. That no is no. But they had to put something behind it. They had to put. See, brothers and sisters, if they just said no, and that was it, that would have been that would have been the honest answer. But Esau cannot answer a question honestly. He has to put some trash behind it. When it says no, that means that the word non-Israelite or non-Jew will not be described. And I'm going to say this carefully. You cannot use non-Israelite or non-Jew to describe a Gentile by chapter and verse. Let me say it that way. Let me slow down. There's not going to be Acts chapter such and such, verse such and such. Ephesians chapter such and such, verse such and such. Galatians chapter such and such, verse such and such. You're not going to have it in any place in the Bible where a non-Jew or non-Israel describes a Gentile. It's not there. So why do many of our black Negro ministers follow that theory? You got to ask yourself a question. Why are Negroes following the theories of Caucasian? Like Caucasians is the end all in knowledge. No. They can't even come up. I've been asking for one for 2 years and nothing. You cannot manipulate. You cannot manipulate this book to those that have been reading this book from front to back. The Christians know that a Gentile doesn't identify with non-Israelite, non-Jew. They know this. You can't find it written. No, the exact terms non-Israelite or non-Jew are not used in the Bible in that way. What do they mean in that way? That means you will not, again, find a chapter and verse that will show you that an Israelite or non-Israelite or non-Jew is a Gentile. That's what they're telling you. You're not going to see it like that. But they say, however, the Bible does use the term Gentile to refer to non-Jewish people. There's the trick. But that part right there, we can go to the Bible and see. Because, again, we don't want to play the games. We know that, let's go back to the Bible. According to Luke, I'm just going to read 2 verses. Like I said, I'm not going to have you long. Luke 18. And again, verse 32. Well, yeah, a verse, just real quick. For he shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and shall be mocked, and spitefully entreated, and spitted on. So he shall be delivered unto the Gentiles. Let's go again to the book of John, chapter 11. We're going to show you the Gentiles he was delivered to. John chapter 11. Verse 48. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him. And the Romans, here we go. See, we can know for sure that these people were the Gentiles Christ was delivered to. The people at the bottom look just like the people at the top. The top, ancient photos of Greece and Romans. The Caucasians' forefathers. Romans now. But you see, if we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation, because they had power over the Jews. So you see, we know that they're the Gentiles. So when we see this, we know when it says, however, the Bible does use the term Gentile to refer to non-Jewish people. Now, it will not say it in a chapter and a verse, but if you look at how we looked at it, Christ was turned over to the Gentiles. You have to describe who the Gentiles were, who he was turned over to, and there was Romans. And you see the race of the Romans. But you will not have a verse that says Gentiles are non-Jews. There will never be a verse like that. Although Christians say Gentiles are non-Jews. No verse to prove it, but they believe that that's what it means. No, there's no verse to prove it. But we can see, according to 1 Corinthians, and we keep going back here. If you're bored with it, brothers and sisters, some people are never bored with this because they're learning this. 1 Corinthians 12:1, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren. Now, the term, you got to look at the use of brethren in the Bible from front to back. The way brethren is used, because Caucasian people will have you think that Negroes and white folk and Chinese folk and Arabian folk were brothers in Christ. No, that is not how the Bible presents it. Even from Old to New Testament, the use of the term brethren was your own people. Like we see here. We're going to keep going back over Esther 10. In verse 3, for Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. I'm sorry, let me read that again. I butchered it. For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren. His brethren was his own people. That's why it says seeking the wealth of his people, because that's who his brethren were, his own people, and speaking peace to all his seed, because his seed was his people, which was his brethren. This is the use. This is how the Bible, with chapter and verse, defines brethren. No other way. There's no other way to do it. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 11, verse 15, Son of man, thy brethren, even thy brethren, the men of thy kindred. I'm stopping there. The brethren was the men of your kindred. This is how you defined what something means by looking at it like this. The brethren was the men of your kindred. Point blank. And of course, you know our favorite, Romans 9. And even before we do that, let's go to the book of Acts. Let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 7. Acts chapter 7. Verse 22. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. Moses' brethren was his own people. Over and over. The Bible will never use brethren in any other way. Romans 9, verse 3, for I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites. See, the use of the word brethren has no other understanding besides your own people. And it's proven in the book of Acts. It's proven in the book of Acts, chapter 18. In verse 1, after these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth and found a certain Jew. So Jews are in Corinth, brothers and sisters. It's even a synagogue. That's why it says, I'm going to go back up. And he departed thence and entered into a certain man's house named Justus, one that worshiped God, whose house was joined hard to the synagogue. So there was a synagogue in Corinth because Jews were in Corinth. There was a synagogue in Corinth because Jews were in Corinth. That's why when we go back up to verse 1, after these things Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth. So Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth and found a certain Jew. So again, we're proving to you that the Jews are in Corinth. The Jews are in Corinth. Named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome, and came unto them. So there were Jews in Rome and Jews in Corinth. Again, there were Jews in Rome and Jews in Corinth. Jews in Rome, Jews in Corinth. Now, if these Jews were born in Corinth, if these Jews were born in Rome, what would they call them? Because they were born there. Again, Acts 22 and 3, I am verily a man, which am a Jew born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia. So Paul was a Jew born in Tarsus. So if he was a Jew born in Tarsus, we could see why now it says, and as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? And watch this, verse 27. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, Paul, the chief captain came and said unto Paul, tell me, art thou a Roman? ? And he says, yeah, because he was born there. Paul was Jew by ethnicity, Roman by citizenship. Again, Paul the apostle was a Jew by ethnicity and a Roman by citizenship. And we are proving it to you now. So if a Jew can be born in Rome and be a Roman, then a Jew born in Corinth can be a Corinthian. That's what we're telling you. These Jews were called by other names. So it makes sense going back to 1 Corinthians 12, verse 1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles. Paul is calling his brethren Gentiles. How could you call a Jew by ethnicity born in another nation a Gentile? People don't realize what's going on here. Paul is calling his brethren, that's his own flesh. Flesh. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I will not have you ignorant. Ye, you brethren of mine, my own flesh, know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. You were Gentiles because of idolatry, not the fact that you were not a Jew, not an Israelite. No, this is how you prove what a Gentile is, by reading it. We want to see a verse like this. We want to see a verse where Gentile and non-Jew are together. Won't see it. It's telling you the Gentiles and why, or who the Gentiles were and why. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, his own flesh, I will not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. So a Gentile was an idolater. That's what the book says. Has nothing to do with non-Jew, non-Israelite. Nothing. It was an idolater. They served other gods among other nations. Again, Christians have no verse that's going to show Gentiles or non-Jews or non-Israelites. There is no verse. We already know. But they push that trash out to the people, the weak people. Again, these will be the people with no Bibles. Again, those that sing that church music without understanding every Sunday morning. That so-called music. Those that are deceived. You can't teach emotion. Whether it be crying or whether it be joy, it's all emotion. You cannot teach emotion. So they'll always believe what the Caucasian says about what a Gentile is. Let's go to other books. Let's go to other places, but you can't prove it in the book that you call yourself teaching. The brethren were Gentiles because of idolatry. That is what made you a Gentile, according to the Bible. You worshiping other gods. So a Israelite in their former times were Gentiles because of idolatry. That's one. But we have a second witness in the verses. Back to Romans. Remember, when you look at Acts, when you look at the book of Acts, chapter 18, and verse 1 and 2 again. After these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth, and found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy. Italy is what? Rome. With his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome. So we can see, even in the time of Paul's letters, there were Jews in Rome, and came unto them. So you can see by chapter and verse, there were Jews in Rome. So when we come to Paul's letters to the Romans, when we look at the Romans, book of Romans, chapter 11. We're going straight to it. Romans chapter 11. In verse 12. Now, if the fall of them, we're talking about the Israelites in sin, be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles now, how much more their fullness? For I speak unto you Gentiles. Now, notice, it says, I speak unto you Gentiles. But again, we're going to go straight to the point down in verse 25. For I would not brethren. Now, if you are about context, if you're truly about context, as you say as a Christian, that means Paul will be calling these Gentiles brethren again. Why is Paul calling Gentiles his brethren? Christians have to answer that. You Gentiles, for I speak to you Gentiles. You Gentiles. You. The letter says, you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles. I magnify mine office. And again, when you drop down to verse 25, it didn't change in context. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery. So these Gentiles, that's in verse 13 here. These Gentiles, that's in verse 13 here, are called brethren in verse 25. Like you just witnessed in 1 Corinthians 12, 1 and 2. Paul is calling his brethren Gentiles. Can't get by that. Can't get by that. How is it? How is it? Something's wrong here. Something's wrong here. Romans 9 and 3, for I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh, who are the Gentiles. No, it doesn't say that. It says that his brethren, his kinsmen, according to the flesh, are Israelites. Not the nations. There was no other. His brethren and his kinsmen, according to his flesh, his own people, were Israelites. He makes it clear. So we got to understand. We have to understand, brothers and sisters, why is Paul saying in Romans 11:13, for I speak to you Gentiles, you. He's talking to the Gentiles, you. Inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office. Now, the same Gentiles he's going to note as brethren in verse 25. These are the witnesses that you're going to need in the future. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Watch. And so all Israel shall be saved. Why does it say all Israel shall be saved? Because we're proving to you that the Gentiles were the Israelites. That's why Paul called them brethren. Because the brethren were the Gentiles in verse 13. Can't get around this. You Christians, you can't get around it. For I speak unto you Gentiles in as much as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify my office. So if he's speaking to you, you means who the letter is to, Gentiles. But drop down to verse 25 once again, and those Gentiles were his brethren. Paul's brethren and kinsmen according to the flesh were Israelites. So why is he calling these certain Gentiles brethren when it can't be confirmed with chapter and verse that his brethren was anybody else but Israel? This is the mystery. This is the mystery, brothers and sisters. Paul is calling Gentiles his brethren. We already know his brethren were Israelites, which shows, back to 1 Corinthians 12, there is multiple witnesses where we see this. 1 Corinthians 12, 1 and 2. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles. Again, his brethren, his kinsmen, according to the flesh, were Gentiles because of idolatry. They were, now when I say they were Gentiles, this is a few. This is the church of Corinth. They were still in idolatry. So those that were still in idolatry were Gentiles. But these that came out, now that's why he says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I will not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles. You were means you used to be, because you used to be in idolatry, but now you're not. Now they're not, which means they no longer commit the worshiping to other gods. So we do see that Israelites that were in idolatry, whether they repented of it or not, were Gentiles. Israelites were Gentiles. Here is the proof. 1 Corinthians 1 and 2 is going to lead you to a place where no one can take you from. This is proof that Israelites that were in idolatry were Gentiles. There's no non-Jew, there's no non-Israelite. And you see the same thing in Romans 11. Romans 11 does not disappoint either, because when you look at Romans 11:13, Paul is letting you know. He said, he's writing, look, for I speak to you Gentiles. Why, if he's speaking to you Gentiles, why is he calling these Gentiles brethren in verse 25? Because these Gentiles that were in verse 13, these Gentiles that were in verse 13 were those Israelites that were in idolatry. That's why. The Christians know what time it is. They know. The Bible refers to Israelites being Gentiles over and over and over and over again. Christians just avoid it, because if they pay attention to it, if they don't, we'll say it like this. If the lie doesn't continue and they just continue to push non-Israelite, non-Jew for the white man, we talk about these Negroes. That's on TikTok. These Negroes that have their faith in him, not the Bible. Ask them for a verse, can't give it to you. They'll leave you alone because they can't give it to you. Show me a verse where Gentiles are non-Jew, non-Israelite. Nothing. Can't do it. You can show me a verse with Gentiles in it, but I need to know, is it non-Jew or non-Israel? Because according to the Bible, Gentiles were Israelites. Paul can't call these Gentiles, you Gentiles, brethren, in verse 25. That goes against what he said in Romans 9:3-4. But if these Gentiles that was in verse 13 are called brethren, that means that Paul's brethren were those Gentiles because of idolatry. It told you why. And it's going to tell you again. When you look at Ephesians 2 verse 11, I'm just going to go straight to it. I'm not going to hold you long. Ephesians 2:11. Paul says, for wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh. Now, it says ye being Gentiles and ye being Gentiles in their times past in the flesh. Ye, the ye goes back who the letter is to, and it would be the saints. The saints are the children of Israel. Psalms 148:14, Psalms 50:5, Hosea 11:12. Wherever you want to go. Acts 9:13, Acts 15:26, Acts 15:31. It shows you who those saints are. And every time you look at a verse, it's going to say Israel. It's not going to say anybody else, whether Old or New Testament. So this letter being to the saints and the faithful, these are the Jews there. How do we know that these are the Jews there? Acts 18. See, the book of Acts plays a big part in Paul's letters. The book of Acts 18, verse 19. And he came to Ephesus and left them there, but he himself entered into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. So there was a synagogue in Ephesus. Paul entered into a synagogue in Ephesus and reasoned with the Jews in Ephesus. So there were Jews in Ephesus. That's why in Ephesians 6:23, watch this. I just want to show you this real quick. The book of Ephesians chapter 6. Let me show you again who this letter is to. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 23. Paul writes, peace be to the brethren. Brethren. these Ephesians were his brethren. How? Look at the mystery of it. Peace be to the brethren and love with faith from God the Father and the Lord the Messiah Christ. So when it says peace be to the brethren, those were the Jews in Ephesus. You can clearly see who these letters are to. You can clearly see that they're not just to a multi-ethnic group. These are to the Jews there. That's why he's saying peace be to the brethren in Ephesus, not to all people, brethren. So let's get that out of the way now. So when you go back to Ephesians 2, verse 11, it says, wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh. What does that mean, Gentiles in the flesh? Let's take a look at that. 1 Peter 4. 1 Peter 4. Verse 1. It says, for as much then as Christ has suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourselves likewise with the same mind. For he that has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, that he no longer should live the rest of his time in the flesh to the lust of men, but to the will of God. So when it says in the flesh to the lust of men, let's take a look what it means in the flesh to the lust of men. Let's drop down. For the time past of our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries. Again, idolatry is in the flesh. In the flesh. So when we go back, remember the rest of his time in the flesh, one lust that they did in the flesh was idolatry. Like it says in 1 Corinthians 12, verse 1 and 2. Idolatry was the reason why they were Gentiles. It's saying the same thing here. When they lived in the flesh, they committed idolatry. That's why when we go back, watch this. The book of Ephesians. Verse 11. Wherefore remember that ye, the ye is who the letter was to, being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, they were committing idolatry. When they were in the flesh, they were committing idolatry. 1 Peter 4, verse 2 and 3. Saying the same thing it says in 1 Corinthians 12, 1 and 2. No way around it. They were Gentiles in the flesh because of idolatry, who are called uncircumcision, who were called Gentiles. Uncircumcision is the same as Gentiles. They were called Gentiles by that which is called the circumcision. This is John 7:35. The Gentiles, that's why when it says, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision, let's go back to where that was meant. We're going to go back to the parallel. Again, when it says, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision. The circumcision which, I'll say it like this. The circumcision are the Jews. Let me not go ahead of myself. So when it says, wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh because of idolatry, because of rioting, banqueting, foolishness, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision. Let's go to that. John 7:35 again. We're going to go to the circumcision that called their own brethren uncircumcision. Watch this. John 7:35 again. This is what this is talking about. Then said the circumcision, which is the Jews, among themselves, whither will he go that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed, which were Israelites, among the Gentiles, and teach the Gentiles? So the Jews called their own brethren, the dispersed, Gentiles. The Jews called their dispersed brethren Gentiles. This is what it's talking about in Ephesians 2:11. Directly. Back to Ephesians 2:11. See, brothers and sisters, the Gentiles fall for the crap, but hey, nah. It says, wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision, by that which is called the circumcision, in the flesh made by hands. So when it says, who are called uncircumcision, uncircumcision and Gentiles is the same thing. This lets you know who these Gentiles are. They were in the flesh, Israelites in idolatry. That's why in Jeremiah chapter 6, Jeremiah chapter 16. Pay attention to this. Jeremiah 16. Verse 19. O Lord, my strength and my fortress, and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth. Who are these Gentiles that are going to come to him from the ends of the earth? Let's go back again to Isaiah 5. Don't miss the point. Isaiah 5. Verse 26. And I will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and will hiss unto them from the ends of the earth. The end of the earth, the ends of the earth, the same. And behold, they shall come. They shall come with speed swiftly. So look at this verse. Pay attention to this verse. And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth. End or ends of the earth is the same. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. So these nations that he's going to hiss unto from the end of the earth shall come to him with speed and swiftness. And we already know who these nations are going to be that he's going to hiss unto from the end of the earth. Right here, Zechariah 10. Zechariah chapter 10. Let's look. Nations is the same as Gentiles. I want you to pay attention to this. Zechariah chapter 10, verse 7. And they of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, and their heart shall rejoice as through wine. Yea, their children shall see it and be glad. Their heart shall rejoice in the Lord. For I will hiss for them. The them is Ephraim. I will hiss for them and gather them, for I have redeemed them from the nations, and they shall increase as they have increased. See, the nations he's going to hiss for is the tribes of the northern kingdom. Book, chapter, and verse. So who is he going to hiss for? Ephraim. Those are the nations. That's why when we go back, Isaiah 5:26 one more time. Isaiah 5:26 one more time. And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, from far. and will hiss unto them. The them he's going to hiss for is Ephraim. Those are those nations he's going to hiss for from the end of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. So the nations he's going to hiss for is Ephraim. And the nations are Gentiles. They'll lie to you. Even here, we got to go back down to non-Jew. I'm going to read. I'm going to show you. Know the exact terms non-Israelite or non-Jew are not used in the Bible in that way. However, the Bible does use the term Gentile to refer to non-Jewish people. Now, you won't get the verse, so they're just saying it. Now, here it is. The Hebrew term goy, you won't see goy in the Bible. Plural goyim, you will not see them too. They try to sound deep, but they're not. Is also used. What verse? What chapter? Which generally translates to nation or nations. So, Gentiles are nation or nations. Nations. They're telling you that Gentile means nation or nations. They're telling you that Gentiles mean nation or nations themselves. So when we go back up to, and he will lift up an ensign to the nations, Gentiles, from far, and will hiss for them from the end of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. So when we go back to Jeremiah now 16. Jeremiah 16. In verse 19, this thing had been foretold by Jeremiah the prophet. O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth. Who are these Gentiles that are going to come to Christ from the ends of the earth? Northern kingdom. And part southern kingdom too. Because remember in Isaiah 11 and 12, it was the outcast of Israel and the dispersed from Judah. Both kingdoms together. Those were the Gentiles that were going to come from the ends of the earth to Christ, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. Our fathers inherited lies and vanity. Vanity is idolatry. Vanity is the same as idolatry. Sin. So the Bible foretells the Gentiles that are going to come from the ends of the earth or the end of the earth, and they were northern kingdom. Over and over and over and over, Israelites are Gentiles in the text. No getting around it. Our fathers have inherited lies and vanity, meaning these were in idolatry, worshiping other gods and other nations. That is what the Bible says the Gentiles were. You can see that. Book, chapter, and verse. So again, brothers and sisters, we've got to keep our minds on what the Bible says. You got these Negro, again, you got a lot of these Negroes, brothers and sisters. Man, it can only be about the money. It can only be about the money. It can only be about the money. Because these Negro pastors, they're the most inexperienced when it comes to breaking down the text with the text. They can't do it. They'll go to Google in a minute, like I did. Remember, I went to Google to show you that non-Jew or non-Israelite is not in the Bible. You'll never see it in chapter and verse. You cannot make Gentile mean non-Israelite or non-Jew. Now you can go and refer to a Gentile being a Roman, but that's it. Romans were the Gentiles. But you will not see non-Israelite or non-Jew as the meaning of a Gentile. You won't see it. It's not written. So when will they show us a verse? When will these false pastors, these ignorant ministers, show us a verse? They can't. They prey on the weak. These people, most of our people, brothers and sisters, will never research this because they're in emotion. And this is all they can do. Party, boogie in church, no learning, no books, no nothing. Our people accept being a Gentile because they want to fit in. They want to fit in the Caucasian system. Bow down to Esau. But really, to tell you the truth, this man that is bowing to this man is going to be trouble in the great white throne of judgment. We've been asking for a verse for 3 years. Nope, not going to give it. I said 2, but it was longer. We're looking for the chapter and verse, and there's not one. So how can we just determine by doctrine that Gentiles is non-Israelites and non-Jews when it can't even be proven? All praise to the Most High, brothers and sisters. Didn't want to have you long. Just wanted to go into more detail about what I went over in a short podcast episode I done this morning. So peace and blessings be to you all and all praises. And may the rest, which is very little, of your Sabbath be full of learning and peace.